Hello, welcome to Read Reading to be Read for March 2025. I've got so many awesome books that I've been into lately and a couple that I'm really looking forward to reading. You all will be proud of me. I have been sticking to my commitment to slow down with my reading and only focus on one book at a time. And it's a simplified reading strategy that has paid off tenfold. Like, I am having more fun reading now than I have in years. Years, people! Reading has been a source of stress and obligation for me for the longest time, and significantly simplifying, focusing on one book at a time and trying to limit the number of series that I'm focusing on at a time, amazing. So to that end, what have I been up to? I've been reading Project Hail Mary with my patrons. This was our book club pick. I will admit that I was nervous going into this one. The Martian was good, but I did not find it a relaxing read. Constant problems to solve, stressful situations, and the science was really cool in that book, but I felt like the balance between that and the very human aspect of that story was just off a little. So to everybody who said that Project Hail Mary was possibly better, yeah, absolutely right. At least in my opinion, this one had the perfect balance of everything. It bounced back between two different timelines, and unlike some books, I found both timelines equally fascinating, and for me this was a total page turner. I'm kind of a science novice. I love science and biology, and I always think I'm going to be good at it when it comes up on Jeopardy, but then, yeah, no, I missed most of them. So I know just enough to buzz in and look like an idiot, but nothing beyond that. So the science in this one was actually really convincing to me. I had no issues with anything. There was only a couple of plot points where I was like, I don't know about that one. But for the most part, it was an absolute delight. Now, the thing is, I went into this one without knowing anything about it. So if you're lucky and you haven't read this one yet and you don't know what it's going to be about, I would suggest going in blind, because the discovery process in this book was one of the biggest joys of reading it for me. I had so much fun with it. Right now, it's my favorite book of the year so far. We'll see how that changes with distance and time, but landing at a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I also read Heirs to the Blade by Adrian Tchaikovsky for a project. I had been itching to get back to the series, and I told myself I wouldn't let the broken binding get too far ahead of me with these hardcover releases. And just in time, because they just announced the release of The Heir Wars, which is currently available for pre-order for those who have been buying the hardcovers so far. In any case, you ever read a book in a series where you're like, I love this series so much. It's one of my favorite things I'm reading right now, but I would not be able to recommend the entire thing based on the merit of this one book. It was just okay. In fact, it was a lot less complex than a lot of the other books, a lot fewer politics, focused really heavily on just one thing, and was kind of like a transitional novel for some of the key characters, like emotional growth and discovery and crap like that. My biggest disappointment, there's a spider on the cover. I thought this was going to be a spider-heavy book. No, this is a dragonfly book, but unfortunately they already used a dragonfly on book 2, so they had to find something else to use on this book. But I am also interested in the Commonweal, which is the Dragonfly Kingdom's homeland, so wasn't a bad thing, but you know, I felt like it could have been richer. I feel like there could have been more politics. Politics were kind of very narrowly focused, kind of unbelievably so, because there's such an expansive area that these people occupy. So, I don't know, on the fence, but I still love the series so much. I still highly recommend at least reading the first book and making your decision from there. Like, these are people who have attributes of bugs, and I thought the characters were great, the pacing was awesome, all of the components were highly interesting. Like, yeah, love this one. But this particular book, probably 3 out of 5 star. I also read Essentialism by Greg McKeown. This is the second time I've read this book, and I wish I had left myself notes, because now in hindsight, I'm like, oh yeah, I had the same takeaway from it this time as I did last time, in the sense that my idea of what essentialism is, based on just seeing the title and trying to apply that to my life, was much more helpful than anything actually in the text of the book. This is very heavily geared towards corporate life and upper management, so essentially a book companion for coaching people in those roles. And it has very little to do with things in your personal life or things on a smaller scale, personal projects that you have going. And it was an interesting read, but I felt like after the 3rd or 4th hour of listening to the exact same thing being repeated over and over again in just a slightly different way, that I kind of got the point. So it's really funny because before I even started reading it, I started jotting down what essentialism would look like, what I should pare back, what I should be focusing more on at work, like very specific task-oriented type of things that'll make my life feel a little less stressed and hectic. And get to this thing, I don't know. So where I think it would have a lot of value is to just put you in the mindset of examining your own life and the things that are essential and aren't. And it'll give you something on in the background to kind of help channel your thoughts in that regard. But as far as like practical application tips, I really didn't feel like I came away with anything from it. So kind of a bust, but also I really agree with the overall philosophy of the book, and that if you try to focus on too many things other than the essential, you're going to feel chaotic and overworked. Yeah, totally agree with all of that. But the book itself left a little bit to be desired. And in fact, I felt the same way about Effortless. Had a couple of good points, but overall, I think it was an even weaker presentation than Essentialism, which is probably why in hindsight I thought rereading Essentialism would have been such a better experience, but it wasn't. So 3 stars. But 5 stars for my application to my own life based on what I thought the book was about. Now we move on to currently reading. I have picked up Alien Clay by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This is a standalone sci-fi, and I am reading it for Project Read Burn Horde, and I'm approaching the halfway point on it, and I'm really enjoying it so far. Much better than Service Model, which I read last year, and kind of on par with Cage of Souls. In fact, this is very similar to Cage of Souls. It's almost like he had a great idea involving a penal colony, but 2 totally different ways to tell it. But he's Tchaikovsky, and he writes so much that he can actually explore both possibilities. So take your pick. They're both equally as good so far and kind of the same type of story. But you'll get a more thorough review of this on my upcoming Read Burn Horde out in a week. And here are the books I'm hoping to read over the next few weeks. I'm doing a random draw read for a challenge that I'll post about in a couple of days that I'm running with my patrons. So always excited to pick something random off my TBR. But then shortly after that, I will be picking up Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. It's a new Hunger Games book! Even more exciting by the fact that I only found out that this existed about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So the anticipation hasn't been long for me, but I am very excited about this one. I did not like Ballad for Songbirds and Snakes from a story standpoint. Like, I found that one a very difficult read. But from a writing standpoint, while I was reading that, there were so many moments of brilliant writing techniques that I almost want to reread it again just to enmesh with that. So I am especially excited for Sunrise on the Reaping because not only do I think is it going to be an awesome story, I love elements of competition in anything. I love dystopian settings. I love Suzanne Collins' stories. Or at least the first 2 books. Mockingjay can go piss off, but I'm especially excited to see what this brilliant writer is coming up with next. So that one's getting read on release day if I can manage it. Then at Patron Buddy Read, we are picking up Funny Story by Emily Henry. This is the only published new era Emily Henry that I haven't read yet, and I have thoroughly enjoyed the rest of her books, so I have no reason to expect that I wouldn't also like this one. The only thing that bugs me is it does not have a clean spine. There's limes and lemons all over it, and everything else has a solid color, so it looks really out of place on the shelf. Why? And that pretty much wraps up everything I want to read in March. However, I film these kind of mid-month, so there's a couple of weeks in April that we haven't landed on what we're going to read yet, but there have been a couple of things floating around. One of them is continuing the Dune series with Heretics of Dune. This is book 5 in the series. 4 was really frickin' weird. And I'm not sure if I'm up for more of that weirdness or if it maybe calms down a little bit in this one. But I still am enjoying the writing and the story enough that I would like to see where it goes next, at least through the initial 6 books, and then we'll kind of go from there. So that might get read. Another one that might be on the docket is the Complete Inheritance Games series. I read this first book ages ago for a project and then never continued on. The plan is to reread this one and then continue on with the series immediately and just make a thing of it. It will also help out with my incomplete series challenge, because if I'm going to start something new, or in this case, like this is technically a series I've already started, right? Then I need to be prepared to finish it out within a reasonable time frame. So that will be fun if and when we get to it. And finally, my Audible TBR challenge, I converted into a nice little bullet journal system instead of that random clipboard that I was using. But if I'm not mistaken, at the end of my last episode, I had 290 unread books in my Audible library. I finished Project Hail Mary. That dropped it down. I bought Alien Clay. That brought it back up. But see, I don't mind that I bought it because I was going to read it immediately. That doesn't bother me at all. That's not the kind of stuff I'm trying to avoid doing to meet my goals to stop buying so many audiobooks that just sit there and rot for years. And then finally finished Heirs to the Blade, bringing my total down to $289, which is 3 less than I started with at the beginning of the year. So we're going in the right direction. And I would like to point out, like, it's always easy to see the kind of books that I'm bringing in with my hauls and talking about all of the times I said yes to purchasing something. But I would like to point out that the daily deal yesterday was for one of my all-time favorite authors, Anthony Ryan, Tides of Black Steel. It was like $5, and I decided not to pick it up. I am really living with intentionality now, and my thought process was, yes, I would love to read this. It's very high up on the TBR, but it's not something that, given everything I've got going on, I would be able to get to within a reasonable time frame. In my mind, within a year or so. Like, I don't think I'm going to pick this one up within a year. So I'm taking a $5 gamble that by the time I'm ready to pick it up, A, it will either go on another sale, B, my library might pick up a copy because it's not exclusive to Audible, or C, maybe I'll even be interested in doing a physical read on that one. Although I'm probably not, because it's narrated by Stephen Brand and I love him. But anyway, like a $5 savings to have it now as opposed to possibly having to pay more in the future, that's the kind of mindset that gets me to make that decision over and over again throughout the year until I end up with almost 300 titles unread in my Audible TBR. Like, $5 once, yeah, that seems like a savings, but if you never read the books and you keep doing that over and over again, it adds up. So that was a moment of intentionality I thought I'd share with you because it was a huge win for me. Just because it's pretty doesn't mean I have to own it. And it's also in line with a lot of minimalistic practices of only buying what you need when you're ready to use it, that kind of thing. So anyway, once I finish with Alien Clay, I will be 4 up on the year, and I don't have a specific goal of where I want to be under by the end of the year. I just know that I want my reading to be significantly more than my purchasing. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me on this one. Let me know how your reading life is going this year so far. Any amazing books you've picked up lately? Love to hear about it. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye.